These are the 3 best stretches for women in their 30s. And you might be wondering why I'm telling you these 3 best stretches for women in the 30s, but the reality is women as they age tend to start getting tight in a few different ways. One of them is our posture starts to go like this, okay? And that's tight chest, and then we end up with the shoulders rolling forward like this, and that's not a comfortable feeling in the body to have bad posture, okay? Another area is a lot of women end up with what's called an anterior pelvic tilt. So their pelvis is tilted like this, and it ends up causing lower back pain. And that's often because we sit a lot and we have those tight hip flexors. We also get tight hamstrings too, and tight hips, and this ability to open up our hips like this because we never end up going through a full range of motion in the hip joint. And so here's the deal. If you're a woman in your 30s, well, you're probably more flexible right now than you would be in your 40s, your 50s, or 60s. And so what you need to do is these 3 moves, ideally every single day, so that you can either build on them or maintain them. So you never end up with really bad posture of the pelvis, or tight hips that don't allow you to go through a full range of motion in daily movements that you should feel comfortable in, all right? So the number 1 movement that we're gonna start with is a kneeling hip flexor stretch, okay? So what you're gonna do is grab a pillow, because we want something nice and soft to knee on. You're gonna come into a lunge position, 1 foot forward, 1 foot back behind us. This time we're gonna let our toes just relax on the ground. And we're gonna turn our pelvis forward like this and let our body drop towards our front heel while we're letting that back leg stretch through the hip flexor, okay? So in this position, what we wanna do is this. We wanna open up our chest, lift it toward the sky, create as much space all the way through the abdomen, all the way through this back hip flexor as possible. And then we wanna try to find some deep breaths and some deep relaxation exhalations like this. Like a nice relaxing sigh as we feel that back hip flexor stretch. Again, this is gonna help you if you have that anterior pelvic tilt, or if you have lower back pain or SI joint pain. This is gonna help correct that. It's gonna make your body feel a whole lot better at the same time. Ideally, you hold the stretch for about 1 minute to 90 seconds on the right side, and then you switch and you hold it again for about 1 minute to 90 seconds on the left side. And I'll show you one more variation of this as you get more flexible, so that way you have a way to progress as you gain more flexibility. So if you're able to come into this position and you start to look like your knee to your knee is almost one straight line, well, we can stretch the hip flexor and the back quad even more by grabbing on to the back ankle or the back toes and lifting that foot up like this. At first, starting with one hand behind us, and then second, working our way up to grabbing our ankle and our foot with both hands behind us in this position. If you can do this, well, guess what? You've got nice, loose hip flexors, and it's unlikely that you'll be stuck in an anterior pelvic tilt. So make sure you do this kneeling hip flexor stretch every single day, 60 to 90 seconds each side. That way you don't lose this range of motion, and your body and your hips will feel so much better for it. All right, the second thing let's talk about is that bad posture, all right? So the bad posture that happens is because our chest muscles get really tight, and the muscles between our shoulder blades get really weak. All right, and for a lot of women, that means posture where their shoulders are rolled forward like this, maybe their arms are rolled forward like this, and again, this doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good in the body to have bad posture in your upper back. So we wanna do a move called the tabletop. And I'm gonna show you 2 different variations of the tabletop. That way you have the tools to be able to do it anytime, anywhere. The first variation is done from a chair. And what you're gonna do is start by putting your fingertips to the outside, right next to you like this, walk your feet forward, and then what you're gonna do is pull the shoulder blades back and down. So I'm squeezing the shoulder blades back, and I'm dropping the shoulders away from the ears. From there, I'm going to curl my heels towards my butt like this. So I'm curling them against the ground like this to lift my hips toward the sky, squeeze my glutes, and open my chest as much as possible. And at first, you might be down here, it might be hard, maybe you don't have enough strength, that's totally fine. You can come up, come back down, rest for a second, shake it out, and repeat. The goal would be to work up to the point where you can hold this position with good form, shoulder blades back and down as much as possible, for 60 whole seconds. Now, if you can hold this for 60 whole seconds and it feels good, then we come down to the ground and we repeat the same thing. We start in a seated position. We take our hands right behind our butt with our fingertips pointed backwards. We pull our shoulder blades back. We drop the shoulders away from the ears. We curl the heels toward the butt, squeeze the glutes, and lift up into this tabletop position. And again, at first, maybe you come up and you come down, you rest for a second, and then you come up, come down and rest for a second. And then eventually, you work up to being able to hold this position fully extended, shoulder blades pulled back, shoulders open for 60 full seconds, squeezing the glutes to extend the hips, okay? So again, this is going to strengthen the muscles between the shoulder blades, loosen the muscles in the chest and the shoulders, and help improve your posture. So there's the first 2 stretches. Kneeling hip flexor stretch on both sides, then the tabletop stretch. Now the last one is because we want to have a loose groin, loose hamstrings, and loose ankles. And there's no better movement to tackle all three of those than a simple movement, which is the deep squat, okay? So here's how to work your way into a deep squat. When you're working through a deep squat, it can often be challenging if you haven't come into this position for a while. Some people might just fall right into it. That's great. Let's keep spending time in that position so that you never end up in a position where you have to gain flexibility. And if you're not quite there, then I'll show you some progressions to get you there, okay? So to start, what we wanna do is take a nice wide stance. We wanna make sure our knees are pointing the same direction as the toes. So as you do this, don't let your knees cave in like this. That's gonna put pressure on the insides and the outsides of the knees, and that's not what the knees like. They like to go the same direction as the toes. So as a beginner variation, what you're gonna do is bring your hands on the chair, you're gonna walk your feet forward, and you're gonna slowly drop the hips towards the heels. And at first, maybe you're way up high like this, and you're like, oh, I can't bend that far, my hips are too tight, my lower back's too tight, my hamstrings are too tight. That's totally fine. What we do in this position is we can take a big belly breath in, and then as we exhale, try to let the knees bend more, shift the hips a little, try to drop the hips a little bit closer to the ankles, right? And slowly work our body weight down. And we can also start to work our knees forward, giving us more space for our hips to come through, loosening up the hips even more. And at first what we wanna do is we wanna start working up to holding this position for at least 1 minute, but for some of you, it might be even better to hold this for 2 or 3 minutes to really loosen up the hips on a daily basis. The ability to sit in the bottom of a squat comfortably is such a foundational skill of being a human being that you're gonna wanna practice this every single day to maintain it for as long as possible. Now, if you're able to hold this position and you get to the point where your knees are nice and high, your hips are out, your knees are tracking your toes, and your knees are coming into a full bend position, then we wanna start to come into the ability to squat without having to lean backwards against an object. How do we do that? We bring one hand forward at first, and then we bring the other hand forward next. Now at first, what's gonna happen is you're probably gonna have this rounded posture like this. And that's okay. I'm not so worried about the posture being rounded in this position as we're gaining flexibility. But what we wanna do is over time, grab onto those feet, push those knees out with the elbows, and pull ourselves into a position with better posture. And again, the whole time we're here, we're taking those big belly breaths in, and we're going, we're trying to bring the hips down to the knees. We can shift our knees back and forth from side to side like this. We can even lift the heels up as we do this to kind of loosen up the ankles as well. Just sitting in a squat is such an amazing movement for the hips and the lower body. So while we're here, I might as well give you a couple bonuses, all right, to loosen up the hips even more. Once you're able to sit in the bottom of a squat comfortably, then another way to do things is you can rotate to the side, put both hands on your hip, and you can open your hip and then let it come closed. And then open the hip using the hands to really try and loosen that hip up, okay? You can do this as a part of your stretching routine in the deep squat on each side to help loosen up the groin muscles significantly more, okay? Another thing that you can do as you go from side to side is get the shoulder and the upper back involved. And how you do that is you can rotate this arm down, loop around the knee, just like this, and pull your arm up. And if you can, reach your arm behind your back, grab that hand, and open your chest toward the sky. If you can't do that, that's totally fine just to reach up with the arm as you loop around the knee from side to side, just like this, okay? And then make sure as you come out of it, put your hands down, slowly lift your body up, and slowly come out of that, especially if you spent a few minutes in the bottom of that stretch. There you have it. The 3 best stretches that women in their 30s should be doing every single day to maintain your flexibility and build your flexibility so you never end up with horrible posture, this bad pelvic tilt, and hips that don't allow you to move your body the way you want to move in daily life. All right, hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to share it with somebody.